Right now, I'm in the Bay Area right now. But I also have a place in Los Angeles, but I'm just visiting because my daughter actually lives in Marin County, which is about 40 minutes outside of San Francisco over the Golden Gate Bridge.
Ooh. How many children do you have?
I have one. She's 12 now.
So no plans for any more?
Nah, I think that's it. I think that's it for me. I'm getting kind of that age where, like, unless you can afford like 4 or 5 nannies, I'm just like, I don't know. I'm cool.
One is enough.
Yeah, I get it. I get how it works. So,
So you're actually half Japanese, I read. Is that true?
yeah, I'm half Japanese and half Italian. My mom is Japanese and full Japanese, and my dad is full Italian.
So you ever learnt the language?
No, I lived in Japan for like I think it was like almost 3 years, but I just never picked it up. And my mom spoke some weird dialect sometimes and could speak to her friends, but I never picked it up. I was pretty much just, skateboarding, McDonald's and
Yeah,
shit.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was, it was never my thing. I was learning how to play the Black Page by Frank Zappa while everybody was in school. So I kind of just missed that whole part of trying to learn languages and stuff. But I wish I could.
It's too hard, it's impossible.
Now it is, yeah, man. I couldn't, but I kind of wish I did because a lot of my friends that are half and half, are like, oh, it's a great position to be half and half, and also learn the language. They really respect it. It's a great business,
True,
you
yeah.
know, perspective, but I just never did, and so now it's too late,
Too
man.
late. So what part of Japan do you live in?
Well, I was playing with a Brazilian samba band, so we were
What?
touring all around. Yeah, I was like, I mean, this is like 20 years ago or whatever, and so yeah, we first posted up at like the Monza Beach Hotel in Okinawa.
Oh yeah.
I was there for 6 months. Then we moved to Tokyo, Roppongi. I was there for 6 months. Then we traveled all around and kind of did the northern part, and by all the beaches, I guess, and all that stuff, and did circuits out there. It was like Brazilian samba troupe playing three shows a night, 6 days a week, and one hotel for a couple weeks, and we'd travel to the next town, do another one in areas where they spoke no English, and even our interpreter couldn't understand the dialect. We were deep in there. Yeah.
And how were the crowds? Because Japanese are always kind of reserved when they're watching.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty much, well, it was mainly hotel guests. So in Okinawa, there was a lot of Americans because
Yeah,
they had
yeah.
that base there. So I became friends with a lot of the locals because I was there for so long. And then so it was more like a show. So it's like, it's reserved, but when I played it with Guns N' Roses or with Bucket, they would file in a single line, watch the show, clap, go crazy, then all stand up, file out in a single line. No one would pass someone. It'd be like the back row goes out
Yeah, they're like
and
so
it
respectful.
trickles. Yeah, it's kind of weird though. It's kind of like it's not really rock and roll, but
Yeah, yeah.
they they go crazy, but it's all like you know
There's like no
like
risk of a riot.
yeah, it's all like kind of premeditated. Like, okay, here's the song that we get to go crazy on, and then we'll stop. And then this, yeah, there's no there's not really any chaos involved. Yeah. Anyways,
So I guess going from the beginning, how did you get into music? Like when did you first start?
well, I pretty much started in the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area. I kind of grew up in Cupertino, which is home of Apple. Like, I think some of the land that my grandfather owned uh, is like part of Apple Computer now. Like, literally, like that was my hood. Dude, this is not a joke. I drove by there about a month ago, where they're building the new spaceship, that ring thing that they're building,
Yeah.
$50 million, whatever thing it is. And in their parking lot, which is now a huge, just the parking alone is big as the whole spaceship. That's where I used to set my drums up in their in that parking lot. And I used to just play in the orchard there because next to it was a freeway and there wasn't a house for a mile around that whole area. So I could just jam and practice drums without anybody bothering me. And I remember I'd just go, set up, find a flat spot, set up my drums, and just solo for hours. And now it's like that's where the parking lot is for a computer. Yeah.
Apple has ruined the memory.
Yeah, it's gone. I was like, oh my God, it's there. That's where it is now. Because, you can't see the spaceship from the freeway, but you can see the parking complex. So I'm like, that's how close I was to do. Yeah, that was my hood, that whole area, all where they have their stuff.
You didn't buy any shares in Apple at the time?
No, I mean, I was one of the first ones to have like a 5 gig hard, I would go down into Palo Alto near Stanford and I would be buying, the Mac, whatever it was, the Mac, just the Mac or whatever it was called, the one piece. And then they came out the Mac 2, I think, and I bought that. And I was the first one that was doing like, like music shit on it to where I had to buy a 5 gig hard drive and it was $5,000. I think it was more. It was like almost $6,000 for a 5 gig. 5 gigs. It was like $6,000 and it was as big as it was like 3 times as big as a shoebox. Yeah, I remember that. And so basically, yeah, now if I say Cupertino, everybody in the effing world knows where Cupertino is. Yeah. So yeah, that's where I grew up and that's where I practiced on their lot that they purchased now. And
you don't own like any hidden Apple land or anything you can take over?
No, my grandpa sold all of it and because right now, yeah, I could retire on the land that he owned, that he sold to, like apartment complexes they built. And even, if we would have held onto that land or if he would have held onto it now, yeah, it'd be worth so much because it's just the real estate alone is crazy, but there's so many people now that want to just come here and there's not enough houses for the how fast the Silicon Valley is growing in the tech world, So
if only we could go back in time.
Yeah, and then I didn't buy any stock. I heard about it. I knew about it. I knew the people around it, because I was right here. Anyways, that's where I grew up. I grew up in that area, and that's where I play. That's where I learned how to play the drums. Just taking lessons around town with,
So who was your first band? What was the first band you got into?
Well, the first band that I started with, the first real band was the Limbomaniacs, and that was like from my friends from around this area. So that's sort of how I started, like in bands or whatever. We would play house wrecking parties around town, which were just,
so
basically.
You were in Limbo before you went to Primus?
Yes, I was in the Limbomaniacs before I joined Primus. Primus was around though, and they were getting big. And, I was supposed to play in Primus at one point, but I decided, I broke my foot skateboarding, but then I decided like, these are my friends in the Limbomaniacs. And so, but we toured with Primus, I knew Les, I knew Lur, I knew Tim, I knew Todd Huth before Lur was in the band, even, and they had a drummer named Curveball. He was like one of the original ones, and Jay Lane was also, Jay Lane actually went back into Primus after and stuff. But they got Tim, and I knew all of them. We were all friends.
So the Limbo you already knew, like Butthouse was the singer?
Yeah, they were my friends, and that's why I decided to just stay with them because I was like, well, these are the dudes I grew up with. They
Yeah,
all went
you're more
to, high
comfortable.
school. Yeah, I just felt like, hey, this is a good band, and we were kind of we just had gotten signed to Relativity Records, and they were going to put us on tour, and so I was like, um, I was going to play in Primus at the very beginning of it, and they weren't big yet, but I was just like, well, Limbos are my friends, and then Primus found Tim, and then they started getting bigger than us, and then
Mm.
we broke up, and then Primus got huge.
Like, how come Limbo never really took off? Because I've heard your album, The Stinky Grooves, is like it's a really good album, especially for the time. Like, how come it never took off? Do you think?
Well, I think mainly it was our fault. We kind of didn't know what we had. We were like just kind of punk kids that were trying to, um, just we just loved music and we just wanted to just be out there playing. We loved like that whole scene of like the Chili Peppers, Jane's Addiction, um, Fishbone, all that LA scene that was kind of coming out, and we just wanted to do our thing, but I don't think we knew what we had. We had Bill Laswell produced our album,
Yeah,
and we were touring Japan, and they were making us. We were playing the same places like Faith No More, the Beastie Boys. We were big in Japan. Like it was like we would walk around the streets and people would come up to us and they were putting us on the biggest shows, and we didn't know what we had, so we were just a bunch of punks, just like going, yeah, well, I'm just gonna, like
do
it,
whatever.
it's yeah, do whatever, and we didn't take it serious. And I think it was mainly our fault. Everybody was like, hey, write some more songs and take this serious. And we were like, nah, we didn't write a song for like 3 years. We just made that album, and then we kept playing the same ones over again. And then all of a sudden we would get in fights with each other because we were living together in the same place. And we didn't know that you had to just, you don't get too many chances at this, that,
True,
if there's
yeah,
young
true.
kids listening to this, yeah, you get one or two shots at somebody handing you like a ticket for this, and that's it. And then we didn't think about it. We were just like, F it, we don't give a shit. And then all of a sudden, oh, we're dropping you from the label, and now we can't even get a gig. And everybody just kind of split off and did their own thing.
It's funny you mentioned Japan because I remember watching a video of you. You were like at some roller coaster place with the
Oh my
band.
God, dude. That's like, yeah, that's one of the shows they put us on. Yeah,
Uh,
we went on a roller coaster ride. I remember that. And then we did some other ones with like some of the big porn stars they had,
yeah,
and
that
we
was
didn't know.
that was going to be
We
my
were on like,
next question because the video, the X-rated video you done.
yep,
What
yeah.
was that? What was that all about?
Well, that was because we had done. We were a very dysfunctional family, to say the least, and we had made a video, like a legit one where I think Les was in it, and I think Bucket was even in
Yeah,
it.
Maximum Bob.
Maximum Bob. Yep, he was in it, and like I said, a lot of the Primus guys, and we paid a lot of money, but we didn't have no vision. We were just like, oh well, the record company got us somebody to do it or something like that. We didn't, or we were just like flailing around, and then we saw it and we were like, this sucks, this is just so boring or whatever, for I think it was for the song Shake It.
Yeah.
So when we were in New York, somebody there was like, oh man, I know this one guy who's kind of like more on the cutting edge, and he's willing to, do a video and like do this like X-rated kind of video where it's like, we'll get some like nude chicks to come in. We were like,
Yeah.
oh, that sounds way better. So
Yeah.
went in there and we did that, and then, we loved it, but of course, no one was going to play it, and it was
True.
way ahead of its time in the sense of craziness and stuff. It was before like you can do that kind of shit and have it
Yeah.
on anything or anybody will see it. So
So
anyways, yeah.
so it is definitely you in the video because it's hard to tell. You've got like a stocking on your head and you're running
Yeah,
around with like a dildo.
yeah. We got those foam dildos, and we were like playing with each other with them, and we did
Yeah.
that in Japan too, and they loved it. We were
Yeah.
doing all kind
Japan,
of
yeah,
shit.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of like stupid fun stuff, and um, yeah. So Yeah, that was that one.
So how did you come to meet Bill Laswell? Because you said he was the producer of the album.
Yeah, we were super like into Bill Laswell's work, like with the Pill album. Like
Mm,
that was like my favorite album. You know, he had Tony Williams on it. He had Ginger Baker,
mm.
one of my favorite drummers, especially Tony. He's probably my all-time favorite.
Like
And then,
real musicians, proper
yep,
musicians.
but playing rock and stuff, you know. And then he had Steve Vai, I think, before he was in Frank, or maybe around the same time. And then he had I forgot who else was on there. Maybe that was the big three that were on there. But so we loved that album. Then I loved all his African stuff that he was doing,
Oh
you know,
yeah.
like then Rocket. You know, we saw Rocket and we were like, oh shit, like who produced this? Bill Laswell, you know, we were just really getting into him, and we wanted him to produce the album. So we reached out, and our record label, one of the guys at the record label, um, I think it was Cliff Coltrari or whatever, knew him. And we were like, oh, can you hook this up? And he was like, yeah, let me call him. We're like, whoa. And he called, he said, yeah, he's down. We were like, oh shit. So we flew to New York and we made the album.
So what was he like? What was first impressions?
It's funny you asked, because the first impression was we were supposed to meet Bill Laswell at the Gramercy Park Hotel, and he already had like a super heavy attitude about record people, not wanting to meet him, not giving a shit, you know, like, hey, I make real music, which he did with
True.
real artists, and he had won a Grammy for um Rocket, and so he was kind of on top of his game. So he's like, "Well, I'll meet you guys, but you know, don't bring an A&R guy, shit like that." We are like, "Oh, okay," but our A&R guy wanted to come, so you know, we kind of show up and we walk into the Gramercy, and I swear when I walked in, I saw this dude look like Batman in the corner, and I go, "That's got to be Bill," you know, and then but he didn't say a word. We were just all standing around for like 10 minutes. And I go, I know that's him. But Bill didn't come up to us. It's like, we actually, you know, one of the guys was like, oh, if that's him, we should just go over there. And so we walk over there and we're like, hey, are you Bill? And he's like, nods and says, yes. You know, we're like, I knew it, you know, that kind of a thing. But
Yeah.
he never approached us. He didn't say one word while we were like talking. We were just like, yeah, we kind of want to make an album like this. We want to make, and he just would nod. And then we'd be like, yeah, you know, we're thinking like, you know, this or that. And he would kind of like point, you know, we'd be like, oh, is this it? Like, this is how it's going to be? And because it was a record label dude there. So I thought, oh, maybe he's just being a jerk to the record guy. But then when we go record the album, he was into this thing of not talking. So for about the first, like, I don't know, I'd say 2 or 3 weeks, I don't think he said a word.
Crazy.
And I'd go like, Bill, what do you think of that? And he would just kind of nod and go,
Mm.
you know, give like little nods and stuff, or no's and stuff like that. I'd go back in and do it, and our House would sing, and you know, House would be like, so what do you think of that vocal? And he'd be like, you know, kind of just like put his aside. So he was just this character, you know, that we didn't know if he was like playing a game with us or just thought we were a bunch of punks and didn't want to deal with us. But I mean, that was his thing then, you know. He was just a super quiet, like, hey, it just, whatever happens, you know. We don't, because I remember going in there asking him like, hey, what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to play? And he's like, why are you asking me? It's your band, like whatever you want. Like, and we weren't used to that, because we were just, you know, I was kind of a session guy around San Francisco. So I was always going and doing like, you know, suntan oil commercials, and they tell you exactly what they want. There's a chart. So, you know, and then finally when he started talking, like after we got to know him, or I ended up, you know, playing more with him and other things. Obviously we'll get into that with Bucket and everything.
Yeah.
But once he opened up, he was like, oh, you know, you got to watch it, because that stuff will ruin, you know, I know you got to make a living and shit, but you know, if you keep doing ads and working for the man, so to speak, you're just going to end up, you know, it's going to destroy the love and the passion and the all the stuff you love about music, which is, like all the best artists are the ones that they just do what they want to do,
True.
And so, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it, so he had this kind of, like really dark vibe, but but it was positive, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
It was like Darth Vader had the good side of the Force. But his presence was like Darth Vader, but it was always a positive, like, teaching. It was never like a negative feel,
So Darth Vader, but not the dark side.
Yeah. So that's Bill.
He always seems like that when you see him on stage, like quiet, almost kind of moody, but at the same time having fun.
Yep. Yeah. Like, exactly. You think that he would be this like really mean, like tough dude, but he's very quiet, very reserved. Doesn't just kind of slides in and out of things, and that's his whole thing. He likes things to just happen, and whatever happens in that particular situation is kind of like, he used to call them receipts. It was like, well, you just make an album on whatever it is at that moment. It is, put it out. It's done.
It is
Move
what
on.
it is.
It's a total opposite of what I had to go through with Guns.
Do you prefer that kind of producer, somebody who just lets you do what you do, or somebody who's giving you direction the whole time?
Well, that's a good question, because that's a weird. It's weird, because it's weird in the sense that if you're working with a great group of people, I think that style can work. But I think if you're working with a bunch of people that are lost and are looking for guidance, that style gets a little lost. You can put out a lot of stuff that doesn't make any sense because, you're only as good as your weakest link type of thing. And I think that where, like where it excelled was like with Praxis, where you're working with me, Bucket, Bernie, Worrell, and Bootsy. It's like that album, Transmutation, is still one of my favorites because he just let you do what you wanted to do, but you're working with Bernie, Worrell, and Bootsy. It's like, well, it's gonna be great.
Just let them do what they do.
Yeah, but if you're not, it's kind of like, it's like, why not, teach what you know?
Everybody's going in different directions and doing whatever. So how did you meet Bootsy? Because I know he was on the Limbomaniacs album, I think, for one song.
Yeah, that was through Bill. It was, we were like, oh, Bill, we're huge friends of Bootsy's. Could you hook it up? And one day we like got in the van from the Gramercy Hotel, and Bootsy was in there waiting for us. And we were like, oh shit, there's he was like sitting in the van getting ready to go to the studio.
So you'd never met him until then?
Nope, never met him. Just, was one of our idols, and went over to Platinum Island where we were recording right there, and, fucking the heart of New York, couldn't, Keith Haring's, like art studios right up 2 flights up from the studio, and the elevators painted with all of Keith Haring's art, and, and everybody there wanted to meet Bootsy, like I think, they were recording, Omar Hakim was recording an album with Hiram Bullock and a couple other heavies in New York, and the David Letterman band, and they're all like, whoa, Bootsy's here, because he came from Cincinnati, and we're like, yeah, he's in our session. They're like, oh, can we come in and just say hi? Like, everybody just wanted to come in.
And you're like, no, he's with us, sorry, you can't come in.
No, we let him, because I was a huge fan of Omar and those guys. And even though I think Bill in some ways was like, really, those guys are a little cheeseball, but I was just more a fusion fan. So I was like, sure.
So he was in like full gear, Bootsy, when you met him?
Yeah, I mean, not the full like stage, like,
shades and top hat.
Yeah, not like, he was wearing shades, but they weren't they didn't have diamonds on it and weren't stars, and he wasn't wearing a cape.
Yeah.
but he's Bootsy, so he's got his vibe. He's got his, a really cool look and hat on and wearing fatigues and, and just looks like, there's Bootsy, it's like people were just recognizing him, all over pretty much wherever we went in that new music.
So how was he the first time you met him in the van? Like super cool?
The coolest dude you can ever meet.
Yeah.
The most positive, coolest cat,
It always seems like every time I hear him talk, just totally chilled, nicest guy.
Nicest guy, always positive, brings the best playing out of you through just his energy. His contagious energy of just being like, all right, he's like, all right, man, you'll just go do your thing, go in there and kick it, like just do it, man. I know you can do it. You're just like, oh, you want to do good for him.
Yeah.
It's that vibe.
So how did him and Bill interact? Were they okay at first?
Oh, they're great. They've known each other for years, so they were like, they have a camaraderie of just, being two, heavy artists and bass players also. But yeah, they have the most respect for each other. So that was totally chill.
So how did you come to meet Bucket? Because obviously he was in the Shake It video with Maximum Bob. So how did you come to meet him?
Well, I met Bucket through this guy named Joe Gore, who I was in a band with during the after the Limbos broke up. I ended up getting in this band. There was this world beat scene happening in San Francisco, which was like made up of like, I think a core of 3 or 4 bands: the Looters, Big City, the Freaky Executives, and I think there was one more, I can't remember, but I joined this band called Big City, and the guitar player was this guy named Joe Gore. And Joe became the editor of Guitar Player magazine.
Yeah.
And we were living in this city, still in the Limbos kind of, but it was kind of flailing and breaking up. And Joe was like, hey, this guy sent a tape, and his name is Buckethead, and this guy named Maximum Bob sent it, and it's like a pretty funny video, and it's just, but this guy is shredding brain. You got to check this guy out. Yeah. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, here, let's plop it in. And it was VHS. He puts it in, and it's Maximum Bob, yelling to Paul Schaefer, going, Paul, you're gonna have to get this guy to play in your band. He's amazing. He's like, you got to check him out. And there was this dude playing the guitar like I had never seen anybody play it.
Yeah.
Pretty much like, the shredding quickness and the athleticism of like an Yngwie. But the scales and stuff of like computer music, like Star Wars.
Yeah.
Weird
like
Disneyland.
Those arcade game machines that.
Yeah, like game machines meets metal meets, Disneyland. And I was just like, whoa, I've never heard that sound before. Like that's it's like, when you know exactly where you're sitting every time when you hear an amazing piece of music or an album the first time. I remember when I first heard Eddie Van Halen, exactly where I was. When I heard Fishbone, some of my favorite bands, the Chili Peppers, when I was growing up. And I remember I was sitting there in the house, and he played that tape, on 23rd and Mission in San Francisco. And I was like, oh my God. And he's like, yeah, well, he really doesn't get out that much and stuff, but he's coming to San Francisco to meet me. You got to meet him. I'll bring him by the house. And so Joe Gore brought him by the house. I think Les was even there. We kind of had the rock and roll house right there above Scott's Comics on 23rd and Mission. It was literally like 4 houses down from, Mission Street and stuff, in between Mission and Valencia. And so we had the party house. So it's like everybody was hanging out, and Les was there, and Joe Gore brings this guy Buckethead, and we're just like, oh, and he's playing the bass, and Les was like, wow, you're pretty good on that thing. And Les like standoffish at first or whatever, because Bucket was doing all slapping.
So he was in full gear at that when you met him?
Yeah, he's pretty much always in full gear, doing his thing.
Like even back then?
Yeah, I mean, that's his vibe. I mean,
Yeah.
he lives and dies by it, that's his thing. He's like, that's his gig. And it was interesting because he out of everyone, I think for some reason, him and I just hit it off the best. He was just talking about basketball and talking about all this crazy stuff, and I was talking about, and martial arts and Bruce Lee and Jordan, all the things that as a Buckethead fan,
like Texas Chainsaw,
and yet all that stuff. And I think that he's talking about all the horror stuff, and I was really never into horror, so I think he and I just hit it off because the stuff I was into, he didn't really know about. I was more into like fashion stuff and all that kind of stuff, and he was into all the horror stuff. So I think we had a good juxtaposition, and yeah, for some reason we just kind of hit it off. And
so did he actually come on tour with the Limbos?
We played a lot together, and maybe he sat in, but he never went on tour because the Limbos really never went on tour when we were. Never really did that many big tours. What we did when we did do it, it was like in Europe, and we were with Primus, and then we did some state stuff, but it was mainly with Primus. But Bucket never came with us. We did like a couple gigs where we would like go up the West Coast, and he came with us on a couple of those, but not on full tours. But yeah, we did some Seattle, Portland shows, and he came with us and did his whole shtick and blew everybody out, and he was kind of new on the scene, so he was taking everyone out, Mike Patton, Mr. Bungle, they were all like, who's this guy? This is crazy. And then they got the Deli Creeps to open for them, and and all that stuff. But he never came on a full tour, but would do like 2 or 3 shows. Maybe he'd just come and hang out and then sit in.
So what about Maximum Bob? When was the first time you met him?
That was through Bucket when the Deli Creeps came on.
And what was your first impressions of him?
Well, he was just exactly what you get, exactly what you see. So it was pretty much that. You get this kind of huge dude with his shirt off, with an axe in his hand that could probably beat up anybody in the whole place with his fist, and that's all he needs. And he's full on. Yeah.
But like cool dude, or you never really interacted that much with him?
Well, I mean, yeah, with him and like I think it was Pinchface, and I forgot who the bass player was, but I was mainly Bucket. I mean, if I saw him on the street, I could say hey, or whatever. But it was Bucket and I really were more of the close. That's why we continued on, I think, and still played last year together, because we kept in touch, and I think that we just have a rapport, with each other. And I just feel like Maximum Bob is like, I don't know him that well, but I just feel like, he's more of like a singer. Bucket's more of like a musician, in the sense of we can just, talk about more of the music stuff. I don't know. We just, And Pinchface also, like great guy, but I never really got close to both those guys.
Yeah. So how did that then lead into Praxis?
Well, that was what I think, I was started to lead up to also, and earlier when I was saying that after we hung out at the Limbo house and Bucket came by. He came into town, I think it was only the second time or something. And I think that would happen. Well, wait, no, let me get the timeline right, because I think what happened is after we met Bucket, I got the tape, that Maximum Bob tape, to Bill, and Bill saw it, and I said, not only is this guy, a crazy guitar player thing, he also loves Bootsy. And Bill was like, wow, well, okay, cool. Bill would never say wow, but
Yeah.
it's just like, he was like, cool, like,
You raised an eyebrow.
yeah, I raised the eyebrow, and out of nowhere, we're just sitting, Bucket came to visit again, and we're sitting, I remember this because we're sitting at my mom's in Cupertino. I was visiting, and I said, you got to come and meet my mom and hang out for a couple days or whatever. I think he slept over for a couple days. And, this was when before there were cell phones, and the phone rings and my mom's like, hey, it's for you. And I get on the phone, and it's, I think it was like one of Bill's assistants, maybe John Brown or something. I don't know if John was there then, but they were just like, hey, I got Bill on the phone for you. And I'm like, oh, okay. And Bill's there, and he's like, hey, how's it going? I'm like, oh, cool. And he goes, so, hey, I want to do this project. And I'm like, well, it's funny, Bucket's here. You want to talk to Bucket? And he's like, yeah, sure. And Bucket's all, oh, geez,
Yeah.
He talks to Bill, and, he gets off the phone, gives it back to me, and he's all like, his eyes are all lit up. And I'm like, what? And get back on the phone with Bill. And he's like, hey, so, I just talked to Bucket, and it seems like we're a go for this. I want to do this band called Praxis. It's going to be you, Bucket, Half Man Flip from the Jungle Brothers, Bootsy Collins, and Bernie Worrell. And I'm like,
what? Well, what?
Sign me up. We'll start walking right now.
Yeah.
And before you knew it, there was plane flights, and, we flew out to New York, and, we set up, and Bucket's doing his whole shtick and his whole outfit, and, I'm practicing drums, and we're at Greenpoint Studios at this point, Bill's old studio.
Yeah.
Where it was like a converted church or something he had that he made in a warehouse type space, and there was like church chairs in there. Maybe it wasn't a church, it was just that he had bought like all those like long rows of church seating for people in this area. It was just a crazy place.
Like a funeral home.
Yeah, it was awesome. And we're just there jamming or whatever, and all of a sudden Bootsy walks in, and Bucket's soloing, and Bootsy's just like got the biggest smile on his face going, what, like, what is this character? This is it, like that kind of a thing. And we just started jamming, and then before you knew it, we made, then Bernie walks in, he's crazy. It just got crazier and crazier. Yeah. Then Half Man came with Torture, his buddy from the Jungle Brothers, and it was just a goner scene, and we made Transmutation.
Like, you guys never filmed any of those sessions or anything?
I don't think there is any videos. That would have been cool. I don't think anybody filmed it.
It would be like gold seeing that stuff.
Yeah, that would have been great. Yeah, that sucks. I don't think there is. Yeah, we were doing cool photo shoots, and just, yeah, it was pretty amazing.
How did Bootsy and Bucket get along straight away? Like, they were cool?
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, they're still probably, I think, best of friends. Yeah. Beyond, what, I've hung out with Bootsy, a bunch, and done a couple of his videos, of course, with all Bucket, but I think those two really hit it off the same kind of way as like I hit it off with Bucket,
And Bernie was the same?
Yeah, I mean, it's so sad that Bernie's gone now. Yeah. I mean, I saw him like a month before he passed because I knew he wasn't doing well. So I went to one of his shows, actually in Marin, and I came from LA to go see it. And I mean, Bernie is, he's the Jimi Hendrix of the keyboards. I mean,
yeah,
nobody
definitely.
Nobody can touch Bernie and his feel and his ears, and it's just ridiculous. You could throw a rock against the wall, and he'll hum a melody off it, and then start playing a song off what the configuration the rock made as it was bouncing.
Like, it's so crazy going back and watching those Praxis shows. Like, the chemistry is just like so good. It's so good to watch and listen to.
Yeah. I mean, most of those were just improvs, and
That's the best thing. Like somebody will play something, then you go off into this other direction. Is like that's music. That's music to me.
yeah, it was the ultimate with Bernie and that whole thing. I mean,
Mm.
you couldn't, you know, like there wasn't one, I Bernie can go out and just play by himself, and I'd be like, that was a great show. I wouldn't have to play a note. Nobody would.
Yeah,
Bucket and I would just be watching him in awe, just
true.
going like, "Holy shit, man." We never really got to do it with Bootsy, which sucked. He never really came out for the Praxis stuff,
Yeah,
but
why, how come was that? Was it just because Bill was on bass, or?
I just think that, yeah, and with Bootsy, he came out for that special we did, that one with Bill Laswell and friends.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that was awesome, and that was one of my highlights in my musical career, playing on that with him and Pete Cozy, and
That was the PBS one.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's online sometimes. Sometimes I can find that online. I think it's on there somewhere.
it's definitely on there. I watch these things all the time. Like, just I love this
Oh,
stuff.
cool, man.
So, how was it? The first album? How did that come about? How was the process?
Well, the process, yeah, I mean, it was just it was that. It was just like, hey, you got a beat? Yeah, okay, we'll go play it. All right,
Just like
Bootsy just
that.
starts. Yeah, just like that, man. It was just like Bernie had a couple ideas, Bootsy had one, I had two or three beats that I wanted to always play with them. Bucket had a couple riffs, and we just recorded all of it.
Crazy. It's so good to listen to. Would you say
Yeah,
that's your favorite of the Praxis albums?
that's my favorite, and that's probably one of the best thing that I've ever been involved with, and ever, if I can have that on my like tombstone
Yeah.
and be like, what do I want people to remember me by? It would be that, because
Wow.
everything else was, you know, in Primus, it was kind of like, well, that's Les's thing, and it's Primus's thing, and
Yeah.
I'm he wants to make me a part of the band, but it's still mainly,
His
Les's
band.
show, and
Yeah.
he's the captain. And then with Praxis, though, it was like, hey, man, everybody was just doing their thing, and everybody had a voice, even though everybody, Bernie and Bootsy, I mean, like legends already,
Yeah.
and to play with them, I mean, for a musician, I mean, that's the funk train ends with those two guys,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. Like when it comes to a supergroup, I always think Praxis straight away. Like people always throw around supergroups all the time now, but Praxis is the real supergroup, like a musicians group.
Yeah, I mean, I was so just I was honored to be there doing it. I kept saying that, to them, and they're like, oh, man, don't worry about, come on, just play, man. It's all good, because I kept saying,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
really, am I really here? I mean, if you think about it, the history, I mean, the Parliament Funkadelic stuff alone, and Bootsy with James Brown, I
Yeah.
mean, it's it.
It makes you want to listen to that album now, straight away.
Yeah, I still can listen to it, and the crazy thing is, it still sounds like it's now.
Yeah, it stands
You
up.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it stands up. It doesn't sound dated in any way.
Yeah.
No, it sounds like, wow, this could have happened yesterday.
What about Metatron? Because that's another one of my favorites that you guys done.
Yeah, Metatron. Now that was
Because I don't think Bernie and Bootsy were on that one.
no, they weren't on that one, and that one was based around Bill calling. Bucket and I now at this point we're hanging out like, we were really close friends, and he'd come here from LA because I was based in the Bay, and I had a studio in Berkeley. And he'd come, and we'd go to the cemetery every day for like 5 hours, and
You
just
got the
hang out.
cemetery.
Yeah, that was his thing, and he'd do nunchucks on the all the graves, and we were having a ball together, just doing stuff. We would just go down to the wharf and just trip out on people. We love watching people. We just love to go to malls, not because of we like to buy clothes there or stuff. It was more just tripping out on people and going like, oh man, check that guy's vibe. And we'd watch movies all day. We'd just sit in the studio and watch movies for like, you know, 12 hours, and then go get pizza, and then come back, basically just binging.
Yeah, that's the life. Sounds like a great life.
Yes, life. Yeah. And Bill had called and said, hey, if I send you guys some 24 tracks, will you guys record some stuff? And we were like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. Let's let's do some stuff. So, I went to my friend Cookies in the Bay Area with Bucket, and Bucket brought all his crazy stuff, and like it brought his like all his weird gear and
chainsaws and
yeah, just
hatchets.
all his toys and just all this crazy shit. And he just set it up. I brought in a crazy drum set with like weird like mic'd up broken speakers through all this weird shit playing like through a broken PA
Yeah.
and all this weirdo stuff, and we just jammed. And then then we sent it to to Bill, and then he added his parts. And then I think he actually came out at one point. We went to a studio in San Francisco and we did like 1 or 2 days. And so that album was pieced together like kind of like that. Like, hey, you guys, I'm just going to send you some tape. This was before like digital recording and or whatever. And
so was it as much fun to do it that way, or you preferred the way the Transmutation was done, where you're all together?
I think that it for what it is, I think it was perfect for both of them. Like it was cool doing it that way because Bucket and I could just do whatever we wanted, and we didn't know what Bill was going to do. And then when Bill brought it back, we were like, "Oh shit, that's so cool!" Like it was kind of fun, not knowing what our tracks were going to turn into. So I mean, the ultimate is to be sitting there with everybody and Bootsy, Bernie, Bill, and being in the studio. But I wouldn't take back what Metatron became. I thought it became a pretty cool album.
Yeah, I'd agree. I just wish there was footage of all you guys together. That would have been so good, like in the studio.
Yeah, I don't know why. Yeah, nobody got that.
It's like when you watch them Rolling Stones one where they're working on the songs at the time.
Yep. It's cool. It would have been cool thinking about it now.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to see it because, it was so long ago and it was the reason why I think it worked, especially for me, and I think I've talked to Bucket about this, is I didn't think we knew really what we were getting ourselves into. It was just like, oh, we're here with Bernie, Worrell, and Bootsy. Like, if I think about it now,
it's like, wow.
But then I think we were just like, okay, let's go. We I don't know. It was like we were just on a train and that train was going.
So what were some of the memorable shows? I know you said the PBS one. Was there any others you've done? So I know you played like Europe and Poland, Switzerland.
Yeah, the one we did with the Invisible Scratch Pickles with I think it was Mixmaster Mike and Disc was a pretty cool one. I think that was in Poland. And then I think we did one with all of them in New York. That was pretty fun when those guys came along. And that was kind of me hooking that up. And I had met Hubert, I had him do a session and it was ridiculous the way he was scratching.
Yeah.
And then I told Bill, I said, Bill, you got to check out this guy. And he was like, oh shit, yeah, I got a crew over here in New York. And then I was like, whoa, and he's like, why don't we get them all together and do a show? And so, or he put it together because, he could do, he was, had all the power. And so Bill was like, hey, then I'll come out, let's do a Praxis show and have them open and then they'll join in. Then he was like, okay, let's take them to Europe. And then, they were big fans of DXT, because of Rocket. And so they had known Bill and they were total fans of Bill. So they were like, sure, let's do this. And so, that's how that whole thing came about. And those shows were some of my favorites because, Hubert and Mixmaster, Hubert became one of the most famous scratchers in the world and Mixmaster joined the Beastie Boys and, so.
I'm trying to think of the video that he done with Bucket in. It was like a 2-hour video, like a cartoon animation. Like it was so good.
Yeah. That one is incredible. Yeah. And I mean, Hubert's just a master. I just saw him play with Mike Patton about a month ago. well, maybe 2 months ago, and it still is just incredible. Yeah.
Like I was never really into that scratch stuff, but when I first heard him, like just totally different, like so above everybody else.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of it got destroyed because of the whole just what's the difference between a DJ and a scratcher?
Yeah.
Well, one actually is
One's a musician, one's not.
yeah.
Yeah. One's just a guy changing tracks.
Yeah, one's just pressing a button, and one's actually practiced and did their whole thing.
So how did that then, I think, lead into Giant Robot?
Well, Giant Robot was something that we had going for years, because of Bucket being into Giant Robot. I think he has like 5 or 6 of the huge Giant Robot,
Yeah.
like 6 foot tall Giant Robot dolls, and I don't think they're called dolls, but whatever they're called at 6 feet.
Yeah.
But so Bucket always had that around, like, or whatever, and he kind of we kind of made the Giant Robot album with my friend Pete Scaturo, who was the keyboardist of the Limbos. So we had always been talking about making that album, and Pete was a really, he's more of like a what do you want to call it? He's more of like a commercial producer, a little slicker and a little more
Cleaner.
and will tell you like what to do, and we'll piece it together, and help be hands on. And so Bucket, kind of like was like, let's do a Giant Robot album. Let's get Pete, because I have all these samples, and Pete could put them in his. Pete had just bought the Synclavier, which was like, a $200,000 computer work. Michael Jackson had, and 2 other people. I think Michael Jackson had all of them, but so it was like Pete bought one, and it was pretty crazy. So, and was like, let's make a Giant Robot. That's that Giant Robot
Yeah.
album, the one that we did,
which is a great album.
Yeah, I do love that album because of that whole technology was just getting into that whole sampling thing, and Pete just bought the Synclavier and had all the technology to do all that stuff. So it's kind of cool.
Did it then have problems? Something to do with Sony, I read, because you mixed in like the samples, you couldn't use it or something.
Yeah, I think at that point Sony wanted to sign Bucket, but Bucket was kind of like, I don't know, I don't want to go to a major label and be told what to do.
Yeah.
And how to play stuff. I want to just
do
my own thing. And so I think that I don't remember any of the sampling issues, but I remember that Bucket was supposed to sign with Sony, because I think I went down with him to the Sony office, and they were trying to get with him, and they were trying to get him to like do a new school Frankenstein or something, but he was going to play with the guitar, and he, Bucket likes to do his own thing, because, I think he's such a true artist, probably, the in the sense of the word, he is just, he does his thing. That's his thing. And, I think that just scared him to death. I think he was just like, wait, what? I got to do what? He just runs.
Yeah,
he doesn't think about it. Yeah. So, that's why I think he just does his stuff with like Dan, all those albums he does with Dan are amazing, because he just,
it's
whether
him.
you like it or not, it's him, and he just makes them because he loves it. He just loves it. So that's why he makes so many, because he just loves playing.
Yeah. And random question, who's Mrs. Beasley?
I don't know. I actually don't know.
Because I always wondered every time I read it, who's Mrs. Beasley? I would Google it, and it's like some doll from the 1940s or something.
Maybe that's what it is. He never told me.
So I guess from there you went to Godflesh, briefly. You did an album with them.
Yeah, with Godflesh, what happened with that was, the San Francisco thing was kind of popping off at that point. It was kind of like Mr. Bungle was getting big. Primus, the Deli Creeps were in town playing a lot. I think Bucket even moved up to the Bay. All this shit was going on. And my cousin at that point was managing Mr. Bungle. And she also, I think it was Mike really liked this band Godflesh. So Mike was like, you should manage Godflesh. So she was like, okay. So she started managing this band Godflesh. And then she called me and was like, hey, what are you doing? They're coming from Europe, but they don't have a drummer. Do you want to learn these songs, and go tour with them for this Danzig tour? I got them on Danzig.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, I guess. I never heard their music. I don't really know what it's about, but I'll check it out. I didn't know the history and how deep he was, Justin, the main guy with everything. And it kind of scared me at first. But then when I found out, I met him, he was in the jungle before it was even a term, he just knew all the new hippest music, all this crazy electronic music, like Plastic Man before he was even popular, and all this crazy stuff. And he was telling me about it, and I'm like, whoa, this guy's like super smart, and he's all in this electronic stuff. So yeah, this is going to be awesome. So, I went on tour with them, and then we made that Songs of Love and Hate album, which I love. And
which is super heavy.
Yeah. And he was just the coolest dude, knew everything about all the newest, hippest music, and I learned so much and I loved it. And then, they were in Europe, I was here, I couldn't really go further with them.
Yeah.
I think they ended up doing their own thing. I don't know. I've lost touch with them. I haven't talked to them since then, even. So, which is sad because he was such a rad dude.
Yeah, I don't even know if they're playing anymore. I haven't really checked up on
them. I don't think so. I mean, I think they came into town one time after that, and I think I was supposed to go see him. They might have been opening up for like Skinny Puppy. And I think I tried to reach out, and then, I don't know, nothing really panned out, and I just didn't go to the show.
Yeah, so I guess that then led into Primus.
What happened after that was Primus. At that point, that was probably the lowest part of my whole musical career, or if you want to call it that or whatever, was because I think at that point I was a little lost. I was living in LA, and if you're in LA and you don't know what you're doing, you even get more lost because that place is so transient, and so what happened was, I was just like a little down and out, actually, just kind of like, what am I going to do? I just like got done with Godflesh, got done with the Limbos. There was nothing really happening. And out of nowhere, Les calls. Like literally, I remember I was sitting in Silver Lake. I had this house on Sanborn Avenue right next to Circus Books, right off of Sunset Boulevard. And I was it was like 110 degrees with the smog. And I was there by myself in the apartment. I was really just like, man, it's hot in here. What am I doing?
Yeah, just fed up.
Just fed up, literally. And all of a sudden I get a call and it's Les. And he's like, hey, man, it's Les. I'm like, oh, hey, dude, what's going on? He's like, oh, nothing. He's like, hey, what if, the Chili Peppers called you and asked you to play drums? And I'd be like, oh, that sounds kind of cool.
Yeah.
I guess I'd do. He's like, what about Jane's Addiction? And I'd be like, yeah, that sounds, I don't know. Like it was yesterday. And then he's like, well, what about Primus? Like, what do you mean? He's like, well, we kind of had like a falling out with Tim and, we're looking for a drummer. And I'm like, oh. He's like, why don't you come up and jam? And, I was like, oh, okay. I was kind of blown out and didn't know. And they already had blown up now.
Yeah.
They did Lollapalooza. They were on top of the world. Les had would invite me to his birthday parties up at his Rancho Relaxo house, and it was huge. And, and Lur had 2 homes, Tim had 3 homes, type, everybody, they had everything.
Wow.
And, making tons of money,
Yeah.
headlining big rock festivals, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, wow, if they fly me out and I jam. And I still didn't know, because I was just like, well, I don't know. I mean, I just don't, I wasn't thinking like, oh, was even going to be in their band or join it. Because I remember Les even said, he goes, well, we make a lot of money. Like, aren't you into this? Like, I was like, well, I guess. I mean, I was just kind of freaked out, because maybe it was because I was nervous, because I knew that Tim was becoming the Neil Peart of the music industry. He was the next Neil Peart. Primus was like new Rush of this new, of our time. And it was some big shoes to fill. So I think I was kind of playing the shit. I think, I'm nervous without saying it kind of card. I was just like, oh, okay, I guess, type of thing. Because then he was like, well, if you want the gig, you got it, type of thing. And, we went out to a dinner one time, and he's like, if you want this gig, you got it. And I was like, oh, no, like, because I think it was between Jay and me. I think Lur really wanted me. So I think Les was just kind of like, all right, because Jay's an awesome drummer, and he went back into practice also. But I think at that point, Lur was like, Brain's my buddy. We play in that Frank Zappa band together called Kaka, and Lur and I always got along, and that kind of stuff. So, and Lur's one of my best friends. And so he was like, well, let's get Brain then. So, they asked me, and I was like, oh, okay. And that's basically how I got back into it. It was just kind of like, Les was like, well, we're getting a lot of, everybody and their brother wants this gig. We're getting a lot of tapes of people playing exactly like Tim, but I think he wanted someone different. He wanted someone to play completely different, which I do. And I'm good friends with Tim, and we both know that. But Tim's a way more, technical style of playing. I have chops and I have technique, but Tim has more of the consistency, and mine was more improv, I would say. I would say he can stick to a part and come up with really cool parts. And I was just more like groove oriented and like, okay, here's, jazz. It was like more jazz. I was coming more like, here's the structure of the song, and I'm just going to play around it. So, it was scary shoes to fill. I remember I was pretty nervous at first, playing with them and doing that whole thing. But
did you go straight into the studio and record the album, or you went on tour first?
well, we learned a bunch of songs first and did some local playing, and then I think I did. Then I think we went and did the Brown album. Then we went on tour. But we did some local shows, or Les had another band going at that time called the Holy Mackerel with Bob Cock, and Merv from the Merv band, who is Mark Haggard, who was in the Limbos.
Yeah.
He was like, he introduced me as the new drummer of Primus in that little mini tour, because he had put an album out called The Holy Mackerel, and we went on tour with it.
So it always seems like you're going in like the same circles with all the same guys pretty much from the start of your career.
Yeah, I think because that's how I got the Tom Waits gig, was from Les. He knew Tom, and I guess Tom was looking for a drummer. He says, you should get Brain. This was before Primus. And then when Primus, I joined right around that time. Les was basically getting me every gig you can do. I was playing in his, like, I played in Sausage, then I played in Holy Mackerel, then I played in Primus. And then he got me the gig with, Tom Waits. And, because
what was Tom like when you first met him? Because he's obviously a character. How was he?
Well, yeah, I mean, Tom is probably, like one of, he's definitely one of the most interesting people I've met, because of his work ethic, and the way he records is like, just, I mean, it was such a learning experience about like pretty much like what Bill was teaching, but Tom was that. So going into that, it was great that I went to the Bill Laswell school, because when I went with Tom, it was all like, hey, this, it's got to be the real deal, and it's got to be something that, if you bought it at Guitar Center or learned it from someone, don't bring it here. All just free. Like the first session I did, I remember getting a call, and it was like, I don't know, probably around this time, 11 o'clock. And he had called, and it was just like, hey, this is Tom. Can you come into the studio tomorrow? And I'm like, oh yeah, sure. It's okay. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, what kind of drum set should I bring? I mean, what are we doing? And he's like, oh, no, just bring some wooden shoes. And I was like, oh, okay. So I show up, I brought my dad's. I went to my dad's closet. He had some like cowboy boots that kind of had, I don't know if they're wood, but they were like hard soled shoes. So I thought, wow, that was all I could bring. I brought those, and the first recording was like, we went into this barn, and he had mics all over the place, the craziest, most expensive mics. And I just stomped like on a piece of wood. And he came in and joined me, and we played rhythms on this piece of wood, stomping and slapping our, like he had like, pieces of plywood, and for the backbeat, just hit two pieces of plywood together, and we stomped and did this kind of like down home, on the porch type of like,
Delta blues kind of.
Yeah, blues type of groove thing, and it was incredible.
Crazy.
And we overdubbed it, and he'd come back in and play, and then I'd play something, and it was just wonderful. I was just like, whoa, this guy's on another level.
It's weird how all these different situations always work. Like you said, with Praxis, you did like this church thing. With Tom, you did this weird thing, slapping your shoes.
Yeah, in a barn. I mean, and I've been blessed. I mean, between, playing with Les and that whole thing, and then Tom, and then Bill, Bernie, Bootsy, Buckethead, and all the way up to the Guns N' Roses stuff. I mean, even that was a whole nother learning experience and a whole nother thing.
So which was your best moment in Primus, would you say?
I would say, for me, it was touring with them, and on the Ozfest, it was one of the highlights of my life, opening for, Slayer, System of a Down, Rob Zombie, and the original Black Sabbath. It was probably one of the greatest tours I had ever been involved in, and I felt like our playing and my playing at that point was as good as it was going to get, and it was top notch. And I was just, we were a machine going down the road.
Yeah,
and it felt great. We were just like, we're gonna flip and rip and kick ass, and no one's gonna fuck with us.
Yeah. Who did you meet around that time? Because I remember Fred Durst produced one of the albums. Did you ever meet Fred?
Well, yeah, Fred was around because that was a thing that was happening with us with Primus. We were kind of like, the record company, since we had a really strong fan base and could play like, really not good solid shows, 3,000 to 5,000 people every night. The record company would throw us their new bands they were signing. One was like Blink 182.
Yeah.
And then all these bands would surpass us after, or whatever. And then it was Limp Bizkit, Korn.
Speaking of Fred, like, why do you think Limp Bizkit had such this rise, so then it seemed like overnight there was just a drop and they were gone?
Well, I think for me, it was stylistically. I think it just became, it was kind of like, Two Live Crew or something. It was just kind of like, okay, the shtick
wore off.
it just wore off. It was like, oh shit, okay, yeah, white boys playing rap, and
Yeah, like not cool anymore.
yeah, it just became like, okay, and metal. It was like rap metal, and it was just kind of like, right on, all right, that's gone,
Yeah,
and it was like,
next.
yeah. So I don't have anything to do with the talent because they were all awesome players. I mean, the drummer, the bass player, and what's the guitar player's name? Um, yeah, just
Wes something.
West. Yeah,
What about James Hetfield? I know he was on one of the albums that you done, the
he was
anti-pop.
he was on Anti-Pop. What we decided was we wanted to get someone different to produce each song or a couple songs. So we made a wish list, and it was like, oh man, wouldn't that be great if Stuart Copeland did something?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
Les was a huge Copeland fan. Because Les is a drummer, closet drum, not even he really does play the drums and loves it. So Stuart was a huge fan. Fred was hanging around at that time because um, he was opening for us. Limp Bizkit was opening for us, and then we loved Tom Morello. We thought he'd be good.
The guy from South Park.
Yep. We got Matt to produce a couple songs, and the James Field thing was more of just that. That was on Rhinoplasty, and that was for just like a cover. We were doing a Metallica cover, and Les knew James, so he was like, "Yeah, okay, I'll play some guitar on it." And at that point, I just stayed back. I had just joined the band. I was the new kid in town, so I didn't really say anything. I had known Kirk Hammett a little bit because he was a Godflesh fan. So in Godflesh, he'd come to the shows and then invite me to his house and invite the band to his house and stuff like that. But James and Lars were just like to me or something. It's just like, oh, that's Metallica. Oh, I don't even. I don't think I said one when he came to the studio.
So you never went like surfing with Kurt or skateboarding or anything?
No, he invited me a couple of times surfing, but I never pulled it. I'm just not really into the ocean.
Same.
I get a little nervous out there, so I'm sure when he asked me, he might have meant Hawaii, so I should have probably took him.
Ah, well. So while you were on tour with Primus, you brought Bucket on as a guest spot. How did that come about?
Yeah, that was through Les. That was through like me, you know, telling, hanging around Bucket. Les seemed to always dig Bucket, so I was like, hey, let's bring him on tour with us.
Did he enjoy it? Like being in front of the big crowds?
Oh,
And
he
all
loved
that?
it. Yeah.
Like in his element?
Yeah, I mean, he excels. I mean, his presence and who he is works, I think, the best on a big stage,
Yeah.
It's like his sound is so big. I mean, that's where he excelled. I think that's when Ozzy even had time to play with him.
Yeah. What happened with that? Because
I just think it didn't work out. I think Ozzy in the end Bucket to take off the mask and all this stuff, and he's just like,
yeah.
what I mean? It was just kind of like, this is who I am. Don't you get it? Kind of thing.
Which is kind of surprising because you think Ozzy would have been like really into that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what threw me. Because I was like, wait, what? I would expect him to want this,
Yeah.
But I was just like, no, you should just be yourself. And Bucket was like, no, who I am. So it didn't really work out. But I think he jammed with him, and it was close to where I think he was going to be doing it. And I think he said that, Sharon was, just kind of a lot to deal with also, because he runs the whole show. And
I can imagine, yeah.
that's not a hard one to figure out.
Yeah. So how did you guys form Pieces? Just like a side project?
Yeah. Oh my God, Pieces. Oh man. Shit, I haven't thought of that one in.
Like it's so random, the album, so random noises.
Yeah, I know. I was like, oh, I love that album. It was the same way as Metatron kind of came about. Like we were just hanging out, and John Zorn had called, I think, Bucket, and said, hey, can you deliver me an album? And I think Bucket was like, okay. And then we were just hanging out, and Bucket was like, well, an album. Well, we were like, okay, let's call it. And Bucket kept singing this, about pieces, like, or whatever. I think there was a movie called Pieces or something. I'm not even sure. And so we went into the studio, which I had this kind of ghetto studio in Berkeley. And, we would, the same thing as I said about like Metatron. We'd watch movies for 12 hours, then we would record for 12 hours, and we'd watch some more movies, eat some pizza, and then record. And then we'd wake up the next day and watch some movies and then record. And then in the end, we just called Pieces. Yeah.
So why I Need 5 Minutes Alone? Where did the name come from?
I think we were just wearing each other out. And we were both like, dude, we just need 5 minutes alone. And, it was just like, we were with each other for so long, we were just like, we couldn't take it.
Mm-hmm. What about Danielle? What's the idea behind Danielle? Because it's based on a porn star, right?
Yeah, I think that I kept talking about some like porn, chick or whatever, and I think her name was Danielle Cheeks or something. So
yeah.
I was just like, it was one of those things where it was just like whatever was happening at that moment, we just would write it down, or it became that. There was no thought behind any of it. It was all just happening in real time, and it just became that, the whole album. So that's why it was kind of funny, because we turned it in and it was in mono. And I think John Zorn was like, hey, do you guys know that this is in mono? And we were like, yeah. I was like, yeah, it's in mono, like that kind of a thing.
Like you meant to.
We didn't even know. We didn't pan anything, it was that kind of a thing. It was like, but I love that album. There's a vibe, in it.
Because I know for years, like people on like YouTube and forums, they would always ask, like, who's Danielle? Why is he talking about a porn star?
Yeah, all that stuff was coming from me. Mm-hmm. That was like, because Bucket's,
clean.
He's clean in his, he doesn't. He just likes horror and that stuff.
So, how did you come to work on the next few albums with him? You just sort of like transitioned into doing like Coma and Monsters and Robots, like you were already working on stuff?
Yeah, well, I had my friend Extract, who he's a good friend of mine. I still talk to him, once a week. We had done El Stu together. So Extract is a kind of a dude that's been hanging around the scene, and he had a bunch of beats that him and I had made, because he helped me with the Godflesh. He was the engineer on it. He does a little engineering. He does a little bit of everything. His main thing is bass, though. Mm. And so he was like, hey, I got some beats. He kind of became friends with Bucket, and he just asked Bucket, hey, Brain beats, why don't you just play some guitar on? And then that became Coma. Monsters and Robots sort of was the same thing, but it was just like Les. Les was just kind of like, hey, let me make an album.
Yeah.
So he made Monsters and Robots for Bucket. And then I think Surge did one, right? The chicken one or whatever.
Yeah, the Enter the Chicken, yeah.
And we had met Surge on the Ozfest.
How was he when you met him?
Surge, he's the nice, what you hear on the albums and what you see, you wouldn't believe it was the same person, mm-hmm. But he's one of the most intelligent guys I've ever met. And us three became friends. And I think that, that's why I played on Surge's solo album.
Yeah.
Bucket, and Bucket still, and we're still friends, I still consider him a friend. And, so that's how those albums came about, and then we met Dan because he was working in the guns. He was the second engineer in the gun stuff.
So you never met Dan before then?
No. He was just the engineer, and we became friends through that. And then him and Bucket make, all the albums now.
Yeah, crazy. So how come El Stu never really took off? Because I know you did like a rehearsal album, then you done another one, No Hesitation, but then it was never anything else.
Yeah, it's the same thing, dude, as the Limbos. You get a bunch of characters together that just don't have the same vision, and unless everybody's making a lot of money and you have one head honcho like a Les or a Lars and Hetfield or an Axl,
yeah,
it just kind of nobody keeps it together. And it's like, oh, okay, F you, I'm doing this. Like, yeah, Bucket's off doing his own tours, doing his thing. Hey, I'm gonna go join blah blah blah. And Disc, F you, nobody gets, you know what I mean? It's just like we couldn't handle it. So this new L Stew is just mainly Extract and I putting it together and just getting players that we know. Like I said, like Merv is playing on it, and Lur's on it. Some drummer friends of mine from LA, that are doing this guy named Dave Elich, who is kind of a new up and coming shredder type guy. He's like, but has played in, in Mars Volta and a bunch of different stuff. So, he's playing a few tracks. I'm playing drums. It's just new people and new things.
So you're actually working on an album now with that?
Yes. Yeah. It should be out in about a month, hopefully. We're waiting for Flair to scratch on it because he's the famous DJ Flair.
Flair, yeah.
Yeah, we want him on it. So we're going next week to get him on it. And then, Eddie's already scratched all his stuff. I don't know if Bucket's going to be on this. Bucket's been on tour on his own now and doing his own thing. So I don't think we're going to catch him. I wish we could, but, he's so busy.
Yeah. So how did that then lead into Guns?
Mainly from Bucket, because I was in Primus, and at that point, it had been 6 years in Primus. I think Les, he kind of just realized that Primus is really him and Tim.
Yeah.
I think in a way, and he was kind of going in Lur, and he was kind of going like, I want to kind of get into this jam band scene. It was just picking up. He wanted to, he usually does anyways. He usually does Primus and then takes time off, like he's doing the Lennon thing. I think he was just like, look, I'm going to take some time off. I'm going to go do this thing. And, Bucket was playing in Primus. On tour with Primus. And then we couldn't take him to through this one tour, and it was in Australia. And I remember Bucket calling me and going, hey, Josh is in the band, Josh Freeze, but I don't think he's going to stay in the band. And I've been jamming with Guns, and he recommended me to play with Guns. And I was like, wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty heavy because, there were still, it was Metallica and Guns N' Roses at that point were still the two biggest rock bands in the world.
Yeah.
And, he's like, yeah, Axl's cool. I want to go do this. I might want to play, and I'm just like, would you want to play if Josh left? Because, he didn't know if Josh was going to stay. Because, Josh is the kind of drummer one of the best drummers that I know and could play on anybody's thing.
Like a session.
Yeah. And he's like, I think he's getting a little, wants to get out of here. He's just like, they're not touring. They're not doing anything. And Josh needs to just move on and play. And through all the people, his resume is probably 30 times bigger than mine, and his discography is, probably ridiculous. And so, so he was like, if he left, would you want to come and check it out? And I was just like, yes, yeah, whatever. I didn't even think about it. But then after we got done, because I think Bucket was going to try to recommend me or something. And then when we got off the road, Les kind of said, hey, we've had our fun, he kind of let me go in a sense. He was like, how you feeling about this? And I was like, oh, I get it. He's like, yeah, I just feel like, the band's always
like your band.
Yeah, I felt like he wanted to get the old band back together. And so I was like, okay, I get it. And then, like 3 weeks later, Bucket calls and is like, hey man, I think Josh quit. And that's when I started getting the calls from Guns. I was like, I don't know, I don't know if I want to do this. And they were just like, what do you mean you don't want to do this? And I was like, well, I don't know. I've never really played this style of music. I don't really get it. I'm not sure, and they're like, well, what do you mean? This is Guns N' Roses. Everybody wants this gig. And what do you mean you don't want it? That alone kind of pushed them into, well, just come down and check it out type thing, or whatever. And I think also pushing for me probably helped. But so, then I got the like, limo service to the studio type thing, to like go there. And
what was that like, having the limos and the jets and
well, it was another level, So it was like I was on, like in Spinal Tap where it goes to 11. This
Yeah.
was 11.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I see now. I go to the studio, every drum set, every tech, every keyboard, every guitar, everything you'd ever want. This is the big time. These are like, the best producers, the best engineers. They can get all the best. So
Yeah.
now you're in the big leagues. And when I went there, it was rad.
So who were some of the guys that you first saw when you went there? Like Bucket was already there, and Tommy, and
yeah, it was mainly Tommy, Robin. Bucket wasn't even there yet. I think Bucket was already. They just wanted to meet the other people. So it was like first person I met was Robin, and then Tommy, and then Mother Goose, and then who was Chris Pittman, and then the producer Sean Bevan, and then the engineers Karim Costanzo and Eric Kudo, who was the Pro Tools master dude, and that was who was at the studio. And then I jammed for a little bit on some songs that they had recorded. And then they're like, oh, okay, cool. Hey, man, Axl's going to come by. And I was like, what? Oh, no. Like that kind of a thing. And then, Axl shows up, super cool, just chill, and I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. Just like everybody seems cool. Little did I know how crazy it gets, but at first I was just like, oh, okay. And I think that's the same with Bucket. I both think when we got in it, it was just like, oh, this is going to be a cool thing. And then it just crazy because the level that it has to work on is so big. And we had such big shoes to fill that it just creates this chaos. And then it wasn't even about music anymore. It was just about, oh, they're wearing Bucket out. Oh, they're wearing me out. Oh, they're Robin's upset. Oh, Tommy's quitting. Oh, this is, you know what I mean?
Always something drama.
Yes. Yeah. Like, well, what happens to a band playing music? And it's just like, well, this is pieced together. Yeah. This is pieced together by money. It's like they have the money to hire the best people. So they're just going to get it. But sometimes, like you said, in a supergroup, getting Jocko and Tony Williams and Tom McLaughlin, I don't know if that worked, or
like who do you think that kind of falls on? Does that fall on the management, or did it fall on Axl? Like, nobody was really getting it together.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's like it's Axl's show, and without his vocals and who he is, no one's going to show up. So, it's just kind of like the management have to best people, so they're confused. And I think it's just, I heard it's a lot different now, though. I heard that they show up on time, they play, they're destroying. They go play for 4 hours. This money now,
crazy money.
Yeah, they go and make $200 million a year, or whatever, more probably.
They never contacted you to get back in the new group?
They wanted me to do some stuff before this, where it was kind of like, let's do 2 drummers type thing, because Frank, who replaced me after I quit, after when I had my daughter, I was like, oh, I think I'm just going to stop the road for a while. And I really wanted to get into computers and music and producing and also composing. So during this whole period, I was taking every lesson you can take. I was taking classical piano, blues, piano lessons, jazz, all the computers and music stuff, learning live, learning Logic, learning Pro Tools from whoever I could in LA, the best there was, like of engineers, learning the engineering side of stuff through the engineers that were on, at the studio, because we were recording for 5 or 6 years, just doing stuff in the studio, didn't even play.
Yeah.
Maybe not that long, 3 or 4, but.
Like, where did all that stuff go, all of that recording? Because it seems like there would be more than, 12, 13 songs that they done.
Yeah, I think they have them all. I think, there's enough to probably put out 2 or 3 more albums. I think it's just a matter of, like, who or when. And now it's like, Slash is back in the band and Duff, and they're like, they're in the original band. I think they're just a part of it is Axl. So now 3 people have to make, it's not even Slash's or Duff's music. It was Axl's, ours.
Did you ever meet Brian May at the time? Because I know he recorded some stuff, but they never put it on the album.
He came to the show in London.
I was actually there for that show.
Oh yeah,
you guys were so late. You were like 3 hours late or something. It's crazy.
that was a wear out. I remember that one too because I remember the catering eating that night. I ate spaghetti. Yeah, that was boy, that was a long one, and that was a hard time. That was when, it was a lot of stress during that show and that period. But yeah, came to the show. I didn't say anything. I think they introduced me and I said hi and that was it, or whatever. But yeah, because that was a very stressful time. I remember I was just like, aching from playing hours
beat up
hard and then just beat up. Yeah,
So going back to the first show I think we done was the Rock in Rio.
Yeah.
Like, how was that to be in front of that many people?
Well, that was scary because of we had never really had played with Axl. He never came to any of the rehearsals, and so we had never heard him in our monitors or in ears.
Like, he never came to even one rehearsal?
He came once, sang for about 30 seconds, and then left.
Crazy.
So we go to this show, and it's literally like we're about an hour late. There's like 200 and some thousand people out there waiting for, and I was nervous because I was like, wait a second. We've never heard his vocal. We're going to go play this show in front of all these people.
Yeah.
So I have to say, dude, I was scared. I mean, I was like, Primus was one thing when I first joined because it was kind of like, oh, I got to build a shoot. Alexander, one of the, he just won literally Modern Drummers Rock Drummer of the Year type thing, and then now I'm playing with Guns at Rock in Rio, and had never played with the lead singer.
Yeah, I've never heard the singer sing.
Yeah, and we're late, and there's a little tension, and he's in a whole nother area doing his thing. There's no camaraderie with like, okay, let's do this. It's just kind of like, where's Axl?
Like, what is the deal with that? Does he just like he doesn't care, or he's like, why? Why is he always late that way? What do you think is the reason?
He cares. He knows exactly what's happening. He doesn't. He's just not fucking around. He's a professional because he came out and sang his ass off for 3 hours.
Yeah.
So and to be. I mean, the vocals are the hardest. The voice is the hardest instrument. It's like because it's your mood can affect it. I mean, your mood can affect your playing also and how you feel. But I mean, literally, it's if you're a little tired, your voice is gonna be destroyed.
How he sings, especially.
Yeah. So it's the instrument by nature is crazy. So he had to pull off. He takes his shit serious.
Yeah.
And to run around and do what he does. So I just think that it's just, I mean, it's weird. Yeah. I don't really know. I mean, I have a feeling it's just him, being a little, I don't think it's like premeditated more than he's just, he just gets into his own little expectations are so high. He just gets freaked out maybe, does just like, I know what I do. I'll go out there and do it. Now I heard he rehearses with the band, and he, through some of the people I've talked to or whatever that I've seen or whatever, just like, oh, they're going great.
Wow.
Yeah, he's on time. What do you mean? He comes to rehearsals. It's great. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's crazy. So.
And I remember you told a story once where you guys were playing You Could Be Mine, and he gave you like the look because I guess you hadn't rehearsed the drum part with him, so he got confused.
Yeah, that was in the Rock in Rio show where I was playing, where there's a signal in order for me to do the bill, the big dig 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 dig, that big
Yeah,
the big.
yeah.
In my mind, I know it through the album, but live, hey, he might be running around or he might be on the other side of the stage, and hey, I got to get. It's going to take me some time to get to the mic because I'm, or whatever. And I didn't know the of like, well, he'll cue it, when
Yeah.
he's ready. And it was like I was in rehearsal. So I was hearing it within my head, and I was like, oh, I'm hearing his vocals the way it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I started the part, but he wasn't
Ready.
He wasn't there.
Yeah.
So he gives me this, like, you mother effer, I'm just like, shit. Like, you're supposed to wait for me, dude. Like, and I was like, but he never said anything after. I just realized, okay, I get it. I just wait for him. I don't, he's controlling it. He's the vocalist.
So what happened with the tour? Because I know the rest of the tour was like cancelled, and they kind of blamed it on Bucket. Then they said he had like a stomach, I don't know, infection or something. Like, what happened with that?
Yeah, I don't know if they really, I think what happened was things were going good and Axl was still pulling his moves. And I think that Clear Channel was just getting kind of sick of it. So I think they were just like, you keep shows and we're going to flip and pull the plug. And I think he just missed those and they pulled the plug. And then I think that at that point, they probably had to make an excuse or something. I know that Bucket was having some trouble at that point with his health. And so I think it was just kind of happened to be around the same time. He was very stressed out in it and getting worn out. And I think it was just kind of like, a combination of both. So they might have said that. But, I think it was just because the channel was like, we're done, You can't keep. We missed like 3 or 4 shows in a month.
Yeah, wasn't the first one a Riot? I think in Toronto or Vancouver.
Yeah, I think it was in Canada. We showed up on the. I remember being in the bus and showing up, and all I saw was one of those. What do you call it? Where they block the crowd, like
barricades,
and it was just thrown through the ticket box office, and I was like, I don't think we're playing tonight.
Turn the bus around.
Yeah, I think I went and ate Indian food with Robin and Tommy and the Goose that night. Yeah.
Crazy. So there wasn't one coming through your window at the bus or anything like Conor McGregor, like throwing through the.
No, it was close, but it was more like I think the bus driver just saw what was happening and literally just turned and took off. Yep.
Did you ever have any meetings or interaction with the manager, Doug Goldstein? Because I know he's been over the years kind of controversial. People have said a lot of things about him.
Doug was always great to me. I heard a lot of bad things about him too, but he was always awesome. He was always would answer my calls. I remember going to his hotel 2 or 3 times, asking him certain things about stuff, and he would answer them. He never wore me out or anything, but I know that was at a time when he was getting worn out. I think they were done with him. I think that's when Merck was coming in, and I think that's when a whole another management system, that Sanctuary Group or whatever they're called, was coming in. And I think that's that's what happened. There was I think he was getting burned out, so I don't think he had the power to be the dude he was back in the day when they were on top of the world. Yeah. And then one day he was gone.
Just like that, gone.
Yeah. It's like, what happened? He's been sent home and never saw him again. Crazy. I think we were live at Leeds.
Oh yeah.
Saw him. He was on the bus, and I was like, "Hey, did you see the show?" And he goes, "No, I wasn't allowed to go up there." I was like, "Why?" And he goes, "I just got in a big argument with Betta and Axl, and I can't go up there." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then I never saw him again.
What was your thoughts on Betta? Is she okay, or How was that? How was that arrangement?
Oh yeah, I mean, they're always good to me. I felt like my relationship with them was a little aloof. I always was kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. That's why I think I just got in and then got out.
Yeah.
Did my thing and then got out. Well, yeah, and maybe that's why they never really asked me to come back, because I feel like, they never really felt like, Frank works perfect in it. He loves it. I went and saw one of the shows and it was like, oh, I get it. He's like standing up, fist pumping and stuff. I don't know if he does that now, but when I saw him one time, it was just like, oh, I get it. He digs. I kind of like would wear a hat and put my head down and just get through it.
Yeah.
That's my style. So I don't know.
So are you like a fan of his playing? Like
Who, Frank's?
Yeah.
Yeah. Frank is cool, man. I mean, he's perfect for that band.
Mm-hmm.
He rocks out. He when he hits hard and solid, man. He's great for it.
Mm. What about the VMAs? How was that? So I think that was like the first, other than Rio, was like the first televised appearance of you guys. How was that?
No one knew that we were supposed to be there, so we weren't allowed to go in there. We were just like in a side trailer on the side of the whole building. So we didn't get to be a part of the show at all until they were like, okay, we're going to sneak you in. Literally no one knew that we were supposed to play.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like almost like a dream. It was like, okay, get on stage. Okay, we did it, and it happened in 5 minutes, and then it was done. It was like, well, wait a second. There was no build up or anything to it. It's just literally, oh shit. Did we just play? And I think that's why Axl was a little winded and got a little flack from it, because I think it was the same for him. It was just like, okay, you guys are nowhere to be seen. Okay, now gather in the hall. Okay, Jimmy Fallon's just introduced you. Run on stage, play. It was just like, wait, what? We didn't have a chance to even like think, and figure it out, and then being on the side, know even what was going on. We didn't get to watch the show or anything. We were just like in a trailer, so we could have been anywhere. It wasn't like, hey, we can all hang out. We're backstage in the green room talking to the other stars. Michael Jackson's walking by.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. It was more just like, no, you guys are so far removed because no one knows that you're supposed to even be here. And then get on stage and be done.
Was that by choice by Axl, or just that's how they wanted it?
That's how MTV wanted it. They wanted it to be a surprise.
Because I remember I watched you guys the week before. You were in London, and his vocals sounded completely different. So I knew that like something was up. Yeah,
everything was off with his in-ears also. That's why he kept touching them.
Yeah.
And then he was just like, oh shit, and then we didn't have time to really prepare or get pumped or do any kind of exercises or anything that you would do before any kind of warm up, because we didn't know when we were going on. It was literally just like, someone's going to knock on the door and you guys just got to go. And we were like, wait, what? Okay.
Which is like the complete opposite of what Guns have always done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
then what led to Bucket leaving? How did that come about?
As far as Bucket, I think he was just done with it the same way as like anybody else. I don't think there was any one particular thing. I think he was just like, I'm not having fun in this anymore. Because with Bucket, it's about, fun, so he likes to, and I think that it just wasn't fun anymore, for him. And he just, anytime, every band I've been in with him or anything I've done, when it's not fun anymore, I know he just doesn't like to be involved.
Like, what did you think of the statement that Axl put out, which he kind of blamed Bucket for, I think, the delay of the album and the cancelling of the tour? Like,
at that time, it might have not even have been Axl. That's the whole thing. I don't even know. That's how crazy it is. And at that point, I was kind of like, I went back to Tom Waits, because that was that little period where we took a break.
Yeah.
So I was doing that Real Gone album with Tom, and I took off, and I was in a whole different world. You know, it wasn't until after Bucket quit, and then like a year later, they called and was like, "Hey, we're going to do this again." During that whole time, you know, I had just kind of went and did my own thing like everybody else, and then it's all of a sudden it's like, okay, now we're going to do it again, and it's just like, okay, you know, let's do it. And that's when we did. That's when we got Bumblefoot, and we went on that tour. And then during that period, I told them I was about to have a kid, and then that's when said I'm going to leave the tour, and everybody was like, okay, well, you got to have, you know, we got to get a substitute in, and then that's when we got Frank.
So how were the rest of the band when you told them they were okay, or there was a falling out, or what?
I think they were all cool. You know, I think at that point they were just like, you know, everything's so crazy. Oh, okay, whatever. You got to go. Sounds great. You know, like, you know, Bucket was already gone. This guy Bumblefoot's in the band, and you know, everybody was just like, oh, whatever, dude. Yeah, do your thing.
Like revolving door almost.
Yeah.
One's out, one's in. Did you ever have a conversation with Axl at the time about leaving?
No, I had it with the manager. I said, okay, we'll tell Axl. So I just kind of trusted that they would tell him.
Around the time that Bucket left, I remember you guys were on tour as Giant Robot. Like, I think a month after he left, you guys went on tour together.
Yeah, we might have. I think we did some touring together. Yeah.
So there wasn't like any heat from Axl or Guns because like they apparently couldn't get hold of him, but yet here you are on tour with him.
Yeah, I think at that point they had just let it go. You know, they were just like, you know, whatever. You know, they can't stop him from doing what he wanted. You know, all those threats stuff, you know.
But they never kind of put it on you, like talk with him or get him back or anything like that.
No, I mean, I think that, you know, they knew I was close to him, so I think sometimes they would say, hey, how does Bucket feel about this or that? But not really. They didn't really put any pressure on me, you know. They never. That's why I said with them and their whole management, I always had like 1 foot in, you know, 1 foot out type thing. You know, I was like, okay, when you need, I'll be there, but when you're not, I didn't put too much time into thinking about it.
Yeah. So what did you think of Bumblefoot when he came in?
Not much, because I didn't really know. You know, we were all kind of at that point just like in our own little space. So I didn't think much about it at all. I was just like, oh, okay, there's a third, and you know, you replace Bucket with, you know, I had lost my friend at that point.
Yeah.
And I had known that I was like leaving. So I was done with it. You know, I was already kind of like, well, I'm going to be leaving anyways. And then I didn't know I was going to come back, because I did come back for a quick second.
Yeah.
And then I was like, nah, you know, I think Frank's a better drummer for you guys. And I think they were like, yeah, maybe he is, in a sense, because, you know, he likes it, you know, and I'm always kind of not complaining, but just kind of going, you know, do we really have to rehearse, you know, that kind of stuff. So
like it feels more like a job for you.
Yeah. You know, even though, you know, they've been great to me and everything, it just still felt like, and it was a job, because that's the gig. I mean, they already had huge success. You're gonna have to play those songs. Well, any of those bands, anybody joins, it's kind of a job, you know. Even for Axl.
Yeah. How did they get you back for the one appearance? I think it was 2012.
Yeah, I think they had asked me to just sit in, and so I said, sure, I'll just go sit in. Yeah, I played bongos or something. I think they asked if I wanted to play a song, but I think that I was just like, oh, no, I don't know any or something. Or, you know, I don't know. I just didn't want to, you know, it was easier for me to just like play bongos. So I was just like, okay, I'll show up that night.
So have you had conversations with Axl since then?
Since the House of Blues?
Yeah.
No, not really. I mean, I haven't really, you know, my ex-girlfriend, Melissa, they needed a keyboard player. So she's in the band now. And, you know, we've done some gigs together. You know, she's like my composing partner. We still do music and stuff because we got some films coming out. And that's sort of where, if there's any connection at all, it's kind of through her. You know, and I don't really talk to any of the band members really. You know, I see Richard and I did some Crystal Method gigs. That was kind of cool. He had that connection, and I got to play with the Munch. And
I think you did Jimmy Fallon one time.
Yeah, we did Jimmy Fallon, and we did a couple other shows. It was some other shows like Late Night with that one guy that used to be on MTV. Forgot his name. He was on MTV. He was a disc jockey. I forgot his name, but yeah, I think he's off the air now. But it was like a late night special with him. So Richard, kind of hooked that up, and that was fun. I mean, I loved the Crystal Method, so that was cool. And once in a while, I guess I'll text Frank or something or whatever, and that. But pretty much now that Melissa's in the band and we still do composing, that's kind of where the connection. If there's anything that I hear about anything, it's through her.
So I saw it on one of the Facebook pages, like he sent you the Platinum Chinese Democracy, which he'd signed.
Oh, I really? Someone posted that?
It's on your Facebook page? Or yours and Melissa's?
Yeah, maybe Melissa did it. Maybe Melissa did it a while back, yeah. Because, I don't do any social media, really, which I guess I should.
Yeah, I know. You're hard to get hold of, man.
But, I just have that website that everybody's like, is this you? The Brain Arcane.
Yeah, what is that all about?
Oh, that was my farewell to music. I was just like, okay, I'm going to make the gonest. My friend Adam Gates, who works at Pixar, was like, I'm going to make you the coolest website. I was like, yeah. And so that's what it became. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I send corporate people there, and then they never call back. They're like, oh, okay. Or what does this guy do? I love it. Yeah.
But yeah, I saw that signed album on the Facebook page.
Yeah, it must have been something that she posted on one of ours when we were going through storage or something.
Yeah. So he never contacted you, say, hey, I'm sending this to you, nothing like that?
I think their management did. Yeah. So I thought that was cool. I mean, hey, I played on it, so on 90% of it. So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So what would you say some of the biggest misconceptions about Axl are?
I was like, oh, it's going to be like this, it's going to be like that, because of everything I've read before.
Yeah.
I feel like, what the press has out there is quite different in everything I've been involved with, from whether it be Primus, Tom Waits, Bill, Bootsy, any of those people, everything I read about those people when you do meet them around them and actually are in a working relationship, it's completely, than what everybody has written about or so, I think it's true with Axl also. It's kind of just like, he, to me, I mean, he never, he's always just cool, it's everything around it that just wears you out. And maybe I'm just not that kind of a person that can play in one thing, in one band, playing the same thing over again. I just feel like it's hard for me. I did it for a while, and that's sort of the reason why I kind of left when I came back. I just couldn't really play that style, anymore. Like, it's just not who I am, and it was like, where Frank, I think it's natural for him, or at least it seems like it. Maybe it's tough for him too. I don't know. I haven't heard too many interviews with him, but what he says. But for me, so yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say because all the things that people say about all the people I've worked with, I'm just like, that's not really how it was.
Like totally different.
Or this guy's so.
Like, how come, back when you were in the band, nobody ever gave interviews or, you never put out a video? It always seems strange. You had the album out, there was no video, no promotion.
At that point, I was pretty out of it, so I don't really know too much about that part of it because I was already gone. So I don't know why that never happened.
So I guess after that, you've done some more albums of Bucket. You've done Kevin's Noodle House.
Yep, that was another one that we did the same way as Pieces and all that.
Yeah, it sounds like
we kind of we just totally we're having fun. Kevin's Noodle House was a sign that we saw as we were driving back from the studio, and we're just like, all right, it's called Kevin's Faux Noodle House. And I was like, sounds great.
So random.
Those albums that I have done comes through that. Yeah.
Another one, Brain as Hammer Noodle.
That was another one. It was because the ramen was off the side of the food truck, so we just call, and the guy had put like a H or something on there, and so we were just like, instead of ramen it just said Hammond. Yeah, so Bucket was like, oh, this is called Hammond Noodle. We made that album in real time when I went back to the studio that night.
So crazy. But I think that's what makes it work. Like there's no like plan. It's just do it.
No, we made all that, and even the one with Melissa, the three of us, was all done with like watching movies. We would just go get like the craziest movies, and we would just watch them and then play that whole thing in real time. I think we made like a 12 album set or something.
Why was there never a third one? So I remember they kind of announced a third one, but they only ever put 2 out.
Oh yeah, Kind Regards, I think we were supposed to. Yeah, I don't think it ever made it. I think at that point we were just all going our separate ways. Bucket was on tour doing his own thing. Melissa and I were doing composing for movies, working with that Joseph Kahn, that video director, and so we never got a chance to do it. I wish we could. I mean, those are the parts that are the most fun for me, is touring and making the albums.
Like, how did you actually meet Melissa? Where did you guys meet up?
We met through a mutual friend, Jason Carmer. He produced Donna's and stuff, and his manager was also managing. Donna's manager was also managing Melissa, trying to help her out as a singer-songwriter. So we were working with Jason, and I had met her, and then we just hit it off. As far as music, we just knew loved all the same stuff, and we just liked making music together and doing all that. And then we kind of hooked up as we, together, and we kind of did the whole composing, living together, doing the whole thing, and that became just like too much, trying to
you need 5 minutes alone.
Yeah, we were just watching a movie together, and all of a sudden it's like, wait, did you text blah 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 about the did you zip the file and send it to him? They needed the bass part on, and I'd be like, we're just trying to watch a movie, and then or I'd be wearing her out, and it'd be like, oh boy, maybe we should just keep making music together. That's easy.
Nothing else. Yeah. So was it through you that she got the gig with Guns, like the association with you, I assume?
Yeah. It was kind of like, she was around. She had met, I think it was Karam, because we were doing a couple projects. Karam to help mix, and he was also producing stuff that he wanted us to help with. Like, she was working with Karam on the side, also as just helping him do some vocal stuff on stuff he was producing on the side. Guns was off tour, so she knew Mother Goose because we would just hang out with Mother Goose, Chris Pittman, and and out of nowhere, it was just like, got a call, they were just like, hey, do you think Melissa would want to tour with us because Chris has left the band? And I was like, go. That's crazy. Yeah, I'm sure she would. She's never really, that would be a great thing for her. And so, she went, and, she's an awesome keyboardist, arranger also, and just like kind of a musical director type. So, I knew she could pull it off. It just, would take some hard work and time, and she just, killed it. And I think we all got along with her. And so
you didn't give her like any tips, like be careful of this person or be careful of what's going on over here. Like, you just let her do her own thing.
I just let her do her own thing because at that point it was a different band anyways. I mean, now you got Slash back in the band and Duff. I mean, it's like, it's Roses now, so it's a whole different animal. Let's play our arenas to now we're doing stadiums.
Yeah.
So it's a whole different beast. So it's a whole different thing now. Last time I talked to her about I don't know, it was like about a month ago. I remember her saying she was going to Manila and all the yeah, I mean, they're going to some crazy places for a little, like what, for about a month maybe?
Yeah, like
not a long one, right?
No, it's like a few weeks.
They've been playing some crazy places. I mean, I played a lot of crazy places with them, but now they're doing the whole everything.
To like thousands of people in the middle of
Crazy.
nowhere.
Yeah.
So I think you done the final Praxis album around that time, Profanation.
Yeah, I think that was done. That was done mainly by Bill, and I had flown out, and just Bucket and I went out there, and I think we did 2 or 3 tracks on it with a bunch of other people. But Bill already had that kind of set up. But it was like I think didn't like Iggy Pop go on it? Mike Patton.
Yeah, Iggy Pop, Maximum Ball.
It was a lot of players. Yeah, that was more just like, hey, come out for 2 days, do this, and it wasn't like the other Praxis where it was like.
It doesn't really feel like a Praxis album. Kind of, it feels like a separate project.
More like a Bill Laswell. Yeah, it was more like a Bill Laswell and Friends project, I feel. But it was awesome. Loved it.
How about the Science Faction you did with Bootsy and Bucket? How was that?
I don't even remember that. I think that just kind of came out by somebody else taking our stuff and doing it or something. I forget how that even came about. I don't even know who it was that did that one. Who was it?
I think it was Bootsy.
Was it Bootsy?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because all I remember is I gave some tracks to somebody and then they pieced it together. I didn't know who it was. That wasn't like a Bucket and I thought out one.
Around that time later on, then you started working with Melissa. So I know you've done a lot of stuff with Sony and video games, and you've done like the NBA shows. How does that actually come about? Do they call you, or how does that work out?
Well, yeah, that's sort of my thing. Is I really wanted to get into composing, and I think that's where Melissa and I were headed until she joined Guns, and then got kind of, that's like a full-time thing. And I knew it was gonna be a full-time thing. I don't think she knew what she was getting herself into, but she does now because she's been doing it for a couple years. But right before that though, we were working with Joseph Kahn with Sony, doing like video games for them. We did the Infamous series. We did a couple of those. We did. She had done Bloodborne, which is a pretty game.
You did the Power Rangers.
Yeah, Power Rangers, and that was a Joseph Kahn thing. And then we did Detention. We have a movie that was produced by Eminem that's coming out in November, I think, on Amazon Films. YouTube. Sorry. I think YouTube Red or something, and it's called Bodied. Yeah, that's coming out, and that's going to be pretty cool. The score to that we did together, and that's pretty cool. Then we did a film called Love Is All You Need that came out, I think, last year, and then we're working on. We did some music for this game called Cyberpunk 2077.
Like when you're working on that kind of thing, do they actually show you the game? Like, how do you actually compose it? You compose it around the game, or you already have an idea?
Yeah, we kind of have a little bit of both. We kind of watch the game, and then we kind of they show us some like gameplay, and then they usually have an idea. We have some ideas. We all kind of collaborate. It takes about 7 months, to a year almost. Sometimes, sometimes it's like about 7 months to develop it. What the sound is going to be. Then we maybe record it in like 3 months, and so it takes about a year total to do a video game.
Did you do something with Taylor Swift? I think I read somewhere, like for one of her songs.
Oh, that was we did all the cinematic stuff for her Bad Blood video. That was a Joseph Kahn. He shot the video for that, and he asked if we can do some of the cinematic parts, like the little beginning fight scene we put together.
Which is probably her best video. Like, I'm not the biggest Taylor Swift fan, but I know that song and that video. So you were never like in the studio or anything with Taylor Swift? You never had any interaction?
No, with that it was mainly Joseph kind of, just no one no one knew what the video was. No one knew that it was coming out. It was mostly, liaising between Joseph and Melissa and I, and then her just she was telling Joseph what stuff they want, what she wanted and stuff like that. We kind of went back and forth, did it in our own studio in Venice.
So you didn't ever get like some kind of writing credit or director credit for it?
No, just it was I don't know, we might have got something because I see it on my IMDb, but
because I think she won a Grammy, and I always kind of think, like, does everybody else win a Grammy too for like best video? I don't know.
Yeah, I think a lot of the head people do, but I think we were just like this did a small part of it, so it was like, I don't know, a minute. So I think that's why.
But it's the best minute.
That's cool.
So then late last year you got back with Bucket and went on tour with Dan. So how did that come about?
That was just, again, us hanging out. It's all comes from just hanging out. Like Bucket was just, we were in San Francisco hanging out, and Bucket was like, "Oh, hey, you want a tour?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, let's do this for a little bit," And so we went out for like a month and a half.
You've stayed close, like since he left Guns. You've always like been close, always called each other.
I think we go in and out. I think he gets busy doing his thing. He tours, I was busy doing the composing thing. But I think, he'll always be my friend. I mean, no matter what. I think that when I was in Guns, he didn't want any part of it. So I think he kind of took off, went that way. We don't really talk about it because we just kind of, do our own thing or whatever. So, when we were on tour, we don't really talk about it. We're just in that world, in Bucket world,
Bucket land.
Yep.
Yeah. So what was it like to be back on stage? Because it was like so long. It's been 8-9 years or something since you guys are on stage together.
Yeah, with Bucket. Yeah. It was pretty trippy. It was tough at first because we were just not used to it, like we hadn't played in a while, but it comes back pretty quick because, we're just such a, he's been someone that I've just...
Like a unit.
Yeah, and a lot of my friends that came to the shows, would just say like, "Oh my God," I was like, that was one of the coolest shows I've seen, or whatever, that hadn't seen it or whatever. New fans, new people that I've met throughout the 8 years that we haven't played.
Yeah.
And been in the composing world. They had come and been like, "Oh my God, I didn't know you can do that," and that's what you did with Bucket, because they were just used to me doing composing stuff, which is not playing. It's just like
directing,
moving a mouse around and and directing.
What about P-Sticks? Do you ever have any interaction with him?
He's the greatest, most hardworking dude. He takes James Brown's place for the most hardworking man in show business. That's all I have to say. He's the greatest.
Yeah, he seems like he hasn't stopped. Like, he's doing the website, he's doing like the albums, the artwork, he's on the tour with Bucket.
He does not say a word. He's never complained once, and he kicks ass at whatever he does. He's a remarkable human.
Good guy.
Greatest. Incredible.
Dan's another cool guy.
Oh, Dan's the greatest. Yeah, I mean, Dan's kind of the master of everything. And it's not like, he can engineer, he can play bass, guitar, drums. I don't think there's anything he can't do in music. He sings. Mm-hmm. There's any kind of weird technical question that I have, I call him up and he'll figure it out. He knows everything.
Because he's kind of like an unsung hero amongst you guys because nobody ever really mentions him, but I know he does so much.
Yeah, he does it all. Him and P-Sticks are like, they're incredible. But it was, with them, you can't go wrong.
Mm. Has there ever been talk to get you on one of the Pike albums or do another solo project together?
No, I don't know. We talk about it sometimes, and it would be cool. I mean, it'd be great to make another studio album with them. I mean, I'm game. I think it would be awesome if we did a studio album with him and Bucket, Dan, and I. It would be awesome. Yeah. I'm down.
What about Bill? Are you still in contact with Bill Laswell?
No, I haven't talked to Bill in a while. He's I would love to do something with him. And I mean, I would do it in 2 seconds. I just think that everybody kind of took off and did their own thing, and everybody gets lost, and it gets hard now, to get things together, because you just got to tour with, you can't really make any money with albums. So
yep, true.
But I would do it.
So I know that Buckethead did the Coming Alive podcast when you guys were touring. So did you know about his health issues and problems at the time or not?
Well, he had mentioned it, and I knew that he was having some trouble and stuff. Yeah, I mean, it really sucked, and I think that it was a tough time for him.
So how is he doing now? You spoke to him recently, or?
Yeah, I think he's doing good. I know he went back on tour, and so he might be fine if he's out there playing and stuff, or he's pushing through.
Yeah, it's he doesn't stop. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's been tough.
So no talk to ever get the Limbomaniacs back or anything like that?
No, we joke about it, but we're all too old now. Everybody's doing their own thing,
No, you're not too old.
Yeah, that would be pretty funny, but yeah, I don't know. I mean,
not like a sequel to Shake It.
Yeah, I think it's it was done 20 something years ago, and we still haven't written a song, so I don't think it's gonna happen.
Has it ever been an idea to put a photo book album out or something like that? Because there's hardly any photos of you online anywhere or anything. There's 5 photos of you online.
Yeah, I know. I never take any photos and put them out there. I don't know, because I'm not on Instagram.
Yeah.
So I don't do anything, and it's people are always joking, going, "Why don't you get on it and stuff?" And I'm just like, well, what? I mean, I guess I got to get into it, I don't know. I made that website, and there's not one photo of me or one picture, and I'd love it. And you can't even tell what this guy does or who it is. And I just think it's the greatest. It's just okay, yeah.
There's this dark music playing in the background. What is this? Yeah. Bruce Lee suddenly flashes on screen.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
But you must have a photo collection all the times, with Bernie and Bill and Bootsy and Bucket. You must have photo albums.
Yeah, not really. Yeah, no, I never really do. I never really take photos. I don't know why. I hate seeing myself, so I never take it or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it would be cool. I do want to get on social media again. I mean, I was on it for a little bit back in the day, but I think that on this new thing that posing thing that Melissa and I are doing, I think we got to bring that back up again. It's just that she's so busy with guns and all that, but I think I'll probably be more present with it in the next year, because I really want to promote stuff.
Well, fingers crossed, I'll look out for it.
Yeah, man.
So I wanted to shout out a couple of names and just give first thought or instinct or whatever comment about them. The first thing that comes into your head or whatever.
Yeah, okay.
Bill Laswell.
Bill Batman.
Richard Fortus.
Richard Fortus. He's the man.
The man.
He's the man.
Okay. Les Claypool.
I take it back. Les is the man.
You're going to say the next man is the man, because he is the man. Bernie Worrell.
Oh, Bernie. Bernie is, the first thing that comes to mind is he's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He's the baddest dude in the world. And I mean, he's the nicest guy, but he could be the baddest mother effer in the whole world if you double cross him.
Yeah.
That's Bernie. Yeah. That's what makes him great, though.
Yeah.
Doesn't take shit from anyone.
Great. Bootsy Collins.
That's where the funk train ends.
Yeah. Tommy Stinson.
Well, Tommy, he's pure cred. He's the most street cred dude you'll ever meet.
Tom Waits.
Oh, wow. I mean, Tom is, yeah, he's probably one of the greatest artists I've ever worked with. He's just a true artist. Yeah, I can't.
Pete Scaturo.
He's the master of disaster.
The master of disaster. Joe Gore.
Yeah. Joe Gore is the World Beat Gospel.
The World Beat Gospel. Are you still in contact with him or not?
I haven't talked to Joe in a while, but we email back and forth and and stuff. But I feel like, if I call them up right now, it would be like nothing's changed. We can just talk shop.
Straight in the pocket.
Yep.
Melissa Reese.
Melissa Reese. Oh, probably. She's another. She's like one of probably just talent, just pure talent.
Talent.
That's what I.
Axl Rose.
Say, yep. That's a super talent.
Super talent.
What he does on stage, you can't fuck with that.
Yeah. Last but not least, Buckethead.
Bucket, I consider him a friend, a true friend.
And where would you say, as a musician, where was he like at the peak?
As what's his name in who was it, Khan or whatever in or what was the guy's name in Enter the Dragon?
Khan, yeah.
Yeah, extraordinary. Your style is extraordinary. Yeah, that's what I think of Bucket.
Not like the other guy, Bolo. Is it Bolo, the big guy? Okay, well, I think we're about done, man.
Well, cool, man. Well, I'm glad I could do this, and yeah, man.
It's been an honor to talk to you. You're one of my favorite musicians, and look after yourself and say hi to the family.
Right on, man. Well, same to you, and keep in touch. Let me know when it hits and stuff.
I will. Thank you, brother.
Right on.
Thanks,
all right,
man.
dude.
Thanks, man.
Bye.